Hey there. I offer this podcast freely. Your support really makes a difference. To make a donation, visit reneemckenna.com. Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name is Renee LaValle McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about disconnecting from difficult people. And I've had many difficult people in my life, as I'm sure most of us have. And there are many ways that people can be difficult for us. But generally, if I consider someone difficult, I can boil it down to the experience that I don't feel good when I'm around them or after we've interacted. I either find them draining, annoying, stressful, depressing, dissonant, or downright scary. And I had a scary person experience recently. So I'm in this working group with a couple of other women. It's a very small group. And the dynamic of the meetings is pretty intimate, not just because the group is small, but because we're talking about business and finance in a really nuts and bolts way. We're sharing our financial systems and structures, our numbers, and our goals and plans with each other. And that kind of format can be super productive and a catalyst for a lot of growth and awareness if you're with other like-minded people looking deeply at the same issue within each other and with some opportunities to even give input into what other people are doing. I actually love that kind of format myself, but I found two of the other people in the group extremely difficult. And it's important to note that from my perspective, I need to take responsibility for my own emotions and experience. And although I might label someone as difficult, actually they're difficult for me. And they might be perfectly aligned and well-suited for their partner, for their children, for their best friends, just not for me. Now, a lot of times, people that I find difficult are actually creating that experience for others as well, but that's really not my business, unless they're coming to me as a client or an advisor to help them with their difficultness. But neither of these people were doing that. And the difficulties of these two women were very different, but kind of classic difficult people characteristics. One of them is a victim, and the other one is a bully. One of the problems that I have when confronted with difficult people, probably because I grew up with some difficult people, is I think, oh, maybe I can be helpful here. Maybe there's something for me to learn that I can grow from. Which is always true in any circumstance I'm in. However, some lessons we don't need to learn over and over again, which is basically trust your gut. In my very first meeting, I thought, I don't know if this is going to work. And ultimately, it didn't. And if I really look at it, I didn't even get a lot of value out of the 7 or 8 meetings that we had. But the experience inspired me to talk about this on the podcast, and hopefully it's helpful to other people. Nothing is wasted in the universe. And part of the difficulty was that the bully wanted to bully the victim, and the victim felt victimized by the bully. And they both wanted to talk to me when the other one wasn't there about how to navigate the difficulties they were having with each other, which in itself was annoying and difficult for me because that's not why I was there. So note to self, some of the markers of difficult people is my gut instinct or my intuition says, I don't like this person. I don't like this situation. This probably isn't going to work for me. But it's subtle, so I override it. That's the first flag. And the second flag is there's a lot of extraneous drama, whether it's drama in my head, thinking about the circumstances or the interactions, or actually other people speaking with me about those interactions outside of the time that we're actually all coming together to do something. I see a lot of the teenagers in my life doing that, where they'll all get together and have a party or something, and then they talk shit about each other for days after. I've come to absolutely hate gossip. It's a super low resonance. And although certainly my work is about helping people process difficulties in their life, we do it from a place of self-responsibility. And what are the positive, constructive changes that can be made to either accept the situation, ask for change, or remove ourselves? And that's my standard protocol for dealing with difficulties. First, I try to accept it. Then I ask for change. And ultimately, if the change doesn't happen, then I remove myself. And that's actually what happened in this group. So I tried to be in acceptance, and the victim-y person is actually quite sweet. She's ruled by tremendous fear. She has a lot of unresolved trauma, and she's really unconscious about her worldview. And, like most victims, incredibly needy. In fact, a victim dynamic actually gets power by being disempowered, and then they suck power from the system or from other people because they aren't yet at a place where they can own their own power or realize even that they have agency and choice and power in the world. Victims see themselves as powerless and other people as powerful. And so they're constantly sucking, needing, drawing power into themselves because they don't yet know how to plug into source or generate their own life energy. In Buddhism, one of the realms of hell is the realm of the hungry ghost, sitting at the banquet of life, but their throat is so tiny they can't swallow the food and be nourished by it. So they're perpetually hungry, starving even. And I grew up with a professional victim. And one of the things that can be really frustrating about working with victims is that they're actually attached to staying victims because that's how they source power. So consciously or unconsciously, they are always creating circumstances or at least have the perspective that things are horrible, nothing's going to work out, everything's so difficult for them, they have all these problems they need help with that they're unsolvable. So they're rendered incapable of caring for themselves fully, either by circumstance, by happenstance, or by choice. And often victims have terrible things happen to them. Victims do seem to have bad luck sometimes. Because this is an interactive universe, that's not really a coincidence. What we're unconscious of within ourselves will be projected out and reflected back to us through circumstances and experiences of our life. Again, we're operating in a system. We aren't separate from the system. And although lots of people tell me, don't read too much into things, I don't know. I think reading into things is quite interesting and fruitful. Not that accidents and difficulties don't happen to all of us. No one gets out of here alive. But the victim perspective can take something that might be no big deal to one person, and it becomes a monumental difficulty that's overwhelming or incapacitating for them. And so the victim of the group started spam texting me right after the very first meeting, wanting me to go over their resume, talk to them about their schedule. And that red flag was more like a billboard, and I have very good boundaries, so I was able to say, please don't text me, I'm unavailable for discussion outside of the meeting. To which they responded, can I email you? No, I'm unavailable outside of the meeting time for text, email, or phone calls. Oh, okay. A week later, they texted me again. I get to remind them, remember, I'm not available for text, email, or phone calls outside of the meeting. Oh, okay. A little bit of a learning curve, but that's fine. Again, they're very sweet. And although I certainly don't want to hang out with them because there's very little reciprocal in that dynamic between us, I do have compassion. It's where they're at in their life. And in fact, one of the other members of the group was able to call them out in this super loving way about their anxiety and basically that they were in a trauma response all the time, and suggested maybe they want to deal with their unresolved emotional issues and get some trauma therapy. To which, of course, the victim said 10 reasons why that was impossible, and then the meeting closed. But I did get to watch someone do a really beautiful intervention. So bullies and victims are often a symbiotic pair, where victims disempower themselves and source power from others. Bullies get their energy from disempowering others and feeding on or feeding themselves with the life energy of those they've bullied. And I talk about this more in episode 153, Energy Vampires. And of course, this is unconscious and very painful, actually, for everyone involved, including the spectators. And so the bully was in perpetual frustration, irritation with the victim. And the victim was always feeling abused and oppressed by the bully. And where victims usually are willing to take some self-responsibility, although they don't have enough personal power or maybe even motivation to actually change their dynamic, and move to a place of self-responsibility, courage, and personal power, bullies frequently are unable or unwilling to look at themselves. And that's exactly what played out in this group. There was some really clear suggestions made to the victim of how they might heal their underlying emotional issues that are driving this dynamic, but they were still too unconsciously engaged and attached to their victimization, and so it interrupted their ability to actually do that work. And although the bully was mostly bullying the victim in the group, occasionally it got turned to me. And when I'm on my game, I'm a 2 strikes you're out person. And this is only for people who aren't close to me. If you're close to me, you get tons of strikes because there's all kinds of things happening all the time. But I did one day have to say to the bully, don't speak to me that way. And I don't know if she really got it, but she did stop. And one of the next times we met, she was pretty openly abusive to the victim, and it was unconscionable for me. And I had to say, you can't talk to other people that way either. And I asked for her to modify her language, and she went on a tirade against me. And that was it. Second strike. I'm going to leave the group now. Too much drama for me. All these power dynamics flying around, which is actually probably the deeper work that needed to happen, but it's not the reason that we came together as a group. And that higher purpose was being interrupted by this bully-victim dynamic. And as I removed myself, there was a series of scathing emails that came. And then the victim started messaging me, I can't believe she's saying that. And whoa. So luckily it takes 2 people to fight. And bullies love to fight and generally won't let go until they have some idea that they have won. And I have learned the value of surrender. And so I didn't even read those emails. In fact, I just swiped left on them. Well, I responded to 1, but that was it. And then the bully turned their attention to me, and God bless you. I gotta say, it took a day to shake it off. And then, of course, the victim started messaging me, what if we work together one-on-one? No thanks. I think I'll find another way to do this work. And to be clear, I've been a bully and a victim in my life and lean more toward bully. In fact, it was only when I was willing to own my own experience of victimization and my perspective of it that the bullying dynamic began to dissolve. Because there's a victim under every bully, and every victim has an inner bully. And if you look deeply at their life, there's generally someone the victim is bullying. And there's almost always someone the bully feels oppressed, disempowered, or victimized by, whether it's a family member or an institution. And I believe our work as humans is to grow and evolve. And the difficulties, the dysfunctions that we have are not a coincidence. That's our personal work as an individual unit of consciousness in this larger consciousness system. I love the idea that on a soul level, perhaps we even volunteer to evolve whatever the particular energetic structures that we have in this lifetime. I had a teacher once who said, before we incarnate, maybe there's like a giant baggage claim, and we each grab a couple of bags of shit to work on in this lifetime before we come in. I like that idea, that although we may be unconscious of it on a human level, on the ultimate level, we are willing participants and maybe even spiritual warriors in the evolution of consciousness. And although certainly on a human and personality level, no one wants to be abused, oppressed, harmed. And those harms are real in ordinary reality. But on a soul level, the circumstances of our birth, our gender, our sexual orientation, our race, ethnicity, religious circumstances are not a coincidence. Our body type, our health or illness, all those unique structures are inescapable as the foundations of the work we need to do as we unpack that baggage of lower resonance and help to move it up the consciousness scale into courage, love, compassion, and unconditional acceptance, and peace. And so it must be noted that both the victim and the bully in this dynamic came from very different orientations, both of which have experienced tremendous oppression, abuse, violence, suffering historically. And they're minority groups that have traditionally had a lot of animosity and problems with each other as well. And again, on a personality, on a human level, it's complicated and really challenging. But on a soul level, those particular incarnations for each of these people are not a coincidence. Now, each person is an individual, and you have 3 different children raised in the same way, in the same family, and you're going to often get 3 completely different results. So racial, ethnic, religious, sexual profiling is unhelpful. But I have found it really challenging and helpful to take responsibility for the orientation that I have. Now, I used to identify as white trash, and now I identify as white privilege. That shift in itself has been an interesting experience. It can be quite illuminating to consider that all the circumstances of our birth might not be happenstance, that they are part of the larger, brilliant, infinitely moving complex of our own unique participation in the larger consciousness system. And my favorite question is, where am I being called to grow? Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, consider sharing it with a friend, dropping 5 stars on Spotify or a good review on iTunes. I have lots of great workshops happening on a regular basis on Insight Timer. This week I'll be doing healing anxiety. The first week in March, transforming trauma. And the following week, balancing inner masculine and feminine. I'm almost done with my 10-part healing trauma audio course. It's so good. I'm really excited to be able to share that with you. If you want to do some powerful work to transform your own unresolved emotional issues, heal your own trauma, nourish, support, and express your best self in the world. And if you're interested in doing some of that work one-on-one, shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. We can set up a free 30-minute discovery call. I have a gathering group of people for my year-long mentorship program, which is going to start next September. But there are some prerequisites for that. Again, reach out if you want to learn more about this amazing year-long opportunity, combination of classwork, practical application with other students, and one-on-one sessions with me. Mentorship is a tremendous supercharger, put you solidly on your own path of bringing what's best about you into the world for the benefit of yourself and others. Thanks as always to my generous supporters on Patreon and through this podcast. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaValle McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.